Yeah, I could have emailed him, couldn't I? But someone decides to keep sending spam through my email account, so I'll go straight to junk, so no one responds. So I have to invite people by paper airplane. Cheers, Cat. Call them up. No, I don't like talking on the phone. Hope to God that they get there. I'm not going to hope to God. I'm not going to, put my faith in that. I'm going to put my faith in something much stronger than that, Cat. Video editing. Yeah, they'll get there. Don't worry.
Let's see, I need to start getting Songbird built, start finding some pieces. What's gonna work here? What's this? What the heck? Hello, Tales from the Art Side. This is Bill, Bill making stuff from the other side of the pond. Oh, wow, from Bill. Man, that guy misses calling. He's got an arm. Should have been in the NFL. Anyway, so I'm doing another Big Bot Bash this year and wanted to know if you would like to be a part of the collaboration. If not, cool, your loss. But do what you want. Cheers, Bill. Oh, he sounds like he was in a pretty good mood. What's this? P.S. Your builds are bootylicious. Huh. Yeah, that's what a coincidence. His handwriting looks a lot like mine. Well, I guess I'll have to put Songbird off for a minute, but on to Big Bot Bash. So here's Bill's, or Mr. Stuff's, junk bot generator. It contains 6 primary parts of the bot: body, head, arms, hands, legs, and flavor. Tastes like chicken. Each of these categories has 20 attributes, to which I am to roll a 20-sided die, and based on the outcome of the rolls, build a bot inspired by these attributes. Well, let's get started. Okay, first roll for the body, a 20. According to the generator, the attribute is death. Interesting. Second roll for the head, a 15. That means spiky. Fourth roll for the hands, a 12. Electric. Boogie, woogie, woogie. Third roll for the arms, another 12. Triple jointed. I'll have to figure that one out. Fifth roll, legs, another 12. Stumpy. Okay, at this point I had to look up what the chances were of rolling a 12 3 times on a 20-sided die. And according to Google, it is 1 in 8,000. Wow, the more you know. Okay, back to rolling. For the final roll, flavor, a 10. Jagged. Well, I have my inspiration. Time for bashing. As a safety note, whenever I'm melting plastic or doing something that requires a filtering respirator, this icon will appear in the corner of the video. Well, let's get bashing. So the first thing I did was to gather potential junk parts. Most of these won't be used, but it's a starting point. I decided not to work from a concept and just see how the parts would lead, inspire me. Always risky, but a little fun. I decided to start with the head, or a head-body combo thing. That's my plan. And for it, I'm going to use the planet Jupiter. For those of you that are familiar with my videos, yes, this Jupiter is from the same group of plastic planets I used for the diving helmet in the Big Sister build. For sort of a mini torso, I'm going to use a part from a broken SodaStream machine. I used a rotary tool to cut a hole in the planet ball, then glued in the SodaStream piece. Once they were together, I began to think about this death attribute for the body. That made me think of skeletons and rib cages. So that's what I decided to go with, a sort of rib cage looking thing to represent death on my bot. For this, I used the handy zip tie. Lots of great uses for the zip tie in bashing. For something that represented a sternum, I cut a piece off of some plastic part, I don't even know what that is, and glued it in place. I think that'll look good. The hips were a bit of a puzzle and took some time to figure out. I ended up starting with a conduit joint connector dealie. I figured it would screw on and have a secure attachment to the body. For an attachment point for the hip joint, I found some metal plates with screw threads. These I had torn out of an old light fixture during the handyman build. Once I got the hip apparatus assembled, I locked everything in place using CA glue, and once that had hardened, a bit of hot glue as well. I wanted everything to be secure. The great thing about the threaded light fixture pieces is that the threading was the exact same size as some grease zerks. I couldn't believe it. I put a touch of thread locker on and they went in like butter. And to top it all off, the head of the grease zerks were the perfect size to snap on a couple of connect pieces to finish out the hip joint. Now he can have moves like Jagga. Once the hips were built, it was time to work on those stumpy legs. These black plastic parts I have here are some sort of adapter that came with the set of windshield wipers I bought. They came with several sets of various sizes. Now they shall be robot legs. But to make them work, I had to drill a hole in the upper reinforcement partition. Drilling this hole would allow me to slide a longer connects bar into the frame of the leg, adding extra stability and gluing surface. I just needed to do a bit of trimming, and once that was done, they were ready to slide into place and hot glue in. To prepare for the lower section of the legs, I ran some armature wire through the windshield wiper adapters and locked them into place. For the knee joint, I drilled a hole into 2 connect cylinders and threaded them onto the armature wire. For what will make up the core of the bot's calves and feet, I used 2 shotgun shell wadding. I think I've used them before on other builds, maybe the Big Daddy if I remember right. Once I had removed the center brace from the wadding, I roughly shaped them and punched a hole in the top with a soldering iron. And then I slid them onto the armature wire along with a plastic washer. Now that he's got legs, we can get him glued onto an insulation foam base and posed. For this pose, I'm going to have him stand on top of a mound in a bit of a hero pose. Yeah, he's got a little captain in him. To lock in the leg pose, I hit the joints with little CA glue, and it's time to move onto the arms. For the arms, I once again used parts from the same light fixture I used in the handyman build. A lot of great parts off that fixture. After I drilled the holes for the arms and tore the guts out of the light fixture, I began to assemble the arms by using the plug-ins from a mini flashlight and old cartridges removed from a leaky faucet. If you've ever repaired your faucet, you might recognize these. Why do I still have them? I guess I kept them for just this purpose. So there. Pachow! For what will make up sort of an elbow joint, I'm once again using some leftover parts from my handyman build. These were the knuckles and finger joints for the handyman, and it just so happened that I made 2 extra. These were made by riveting 2 electrical connectors together with a bolt between them acting as a spacer. They screwed nicely into the faucet cartridge and worked great. For the right arm, I found a faulty O2 sensor down in the garage. This I had replaced from my car a couple weeks ago. And yes, I still had it laying around in the shop. Now, it's going to be an awesome bod arm. I used a plastic bottle cap and plastic pipe ring to create an adapter to attach the O2 sensor securely to the elbow joint. I wouldn't want it to have any weak, fragile joints. Once I had the base of the right arm built, I began to add extra details. I added a cap from a broken thermometer to cover the threading around the O2 sensor. Remember how the hand of this bot were supposed to be electric? Boogie, boogie, boogie. Well, I'm going to add some sort of conductors for fingers. These will be made from a 3-part sheetrock wall anchor. Once I had cut the seams of the wall anchor into its 3 parts, I drilled 3 holes in the thermometer cap and found these not Lego pieces that would fit nicely into the holes and give me a good angled platform to glue my wall anchor fingers or electric prongs to. To build a covering for the shoulder joints, I'm going to use one of those vending machine prize balls, which I have been informed in a comment by Persephone's Plushies is called a gochapan, having originated from Japan. I think it roughly translates to an overpriced vending machine prize ball. See, you come away here with a bit more knowledge. The more you know. Roll Rainbow Star. Thank you, Persephone's. To build out the base of the left arm, I used another one of those windshield wiper adapter things. And yes, the pointy thing you see me adding there is a pop-up timer from a Thanksgiving turkey. It's like a true giblet. See, most people use the terms bits and greeblies. I often use the term giblets. The parts you don't really want and don't really want to deal with, but in the right hands can make a pretty good gravy. So I guess I'm just making gravy. Next, I glued on a broth cap and put the whole new arm in place. After getting the arms in place, I decided to add one more set of ribs. I just thought I needed to bring out that design element just a bit more. I found these protein drink containers are a great source of three awesome giblets. The cap, the outer part that connects to the container, and a cool inner cylinder that has all these intricate patterns around the outside, as well as awesome jagged ends. All these pieces will end up playing into this build. I ended up using the part that is molded to the box as a brow or covering of what will be my Cyclops style eye. I decided not to glue the glass lens into place until I was done with most of the paintwork. At this point, it was time to start with some of the more detailed work. Here, I'm building some little pistons that will go on the arms and legs. In order to build these, I'm cutting small cylinders off of plastic tubes from used up ink pens, sliding the smaller tubes on the end of armature wire, then layering the larger tubes over the top. This was a process that just came to me after I watched a Bill Making Stuff video. Well, he used tubes from plastic cotton swabs. I used tubes from my old pens, so it was totally different process. No, in all seriousness, Bill's process for making tiny pistons and actuators is fast, it's easy, and the results are great. Thanks, Bill. I continued to add more giblets and greeblies. I used some not Lego pieces to cover the screw heads on the back of the conduit, and in the front, on the screw heads, I glued on some spent shotgun shell primers. On the left arm, I used half of a bolt anchor to both thicken the arm and give it more interest. And here, I added a brass snap button to cover the threads on the broken SodaStream machine. For the support bars that will make up the feet and lower legs, I once again used old car parts. This time, the frame of a windshield wiper. For these, I just had to grind off the end of a rivet and then pry them loose with the flathead screwdriver. Once they were removed, I split them in half with my rotary tool, then bent the ends out with a set of pliers. Once I had 8 of these made, I used CA glue to attach more not Lego pieces to make up the pads or the little toes of the feet. These just happen to be the same type of pieces I used earlier on the 3-pronged fingers, so I guess they work great for fingers and toes. Then I placed these braces around the legs with just a dab of hot glue. Remember, a little dab will do ya. Did you have that kindergarten teacher too? The one that just walked around during craft time repeating, a little dab will do ya? And I'm thinking, a little dab will do you in the nose. I'll use as much of this paste as I want. Paste. No, I never did eat the paste. But, considering this is a crafting video, and that's what we did in kindergarten, it seems my academic prowess didn't go too far now, did it? Just a quick progress check, and it's time for more details. For joints on the leg braces, I added the heads up from the zip ties I had cut to make the bot's ribs from earlier in the build. I then added to the arms more shotgun primers along with random pieces of plastic bits and electrical wires. At this point, I took a pause from working on the arms and leg detailing and decided I wanted to focus more on the head or body orb thing. So I cut out various shapes from EVA foam and glued them on with CA glue. I know some of you thought I always used leather for things like this, but in this case, EVA was the way to go. After getting a few of the EVA foam plates glued on, I took some pieces from a set of broken headphones to use as exhaust vents and attach them on the bot's back. Once I had those in place, I added the spiky cylinder insert pieces taken from the protein drink box that I had torn apart earlier for the eyebrow piece. I added a couple of little grommets to make small wire ports. Then, knowing I needed to add more spiky details to the head, I took some plastic toothpick flosser dealies. This particular brand makes horrible flossers. You put any pressure on them, and the floss just slides right out. But the toothpick end makes for great bot spikes. To continue with the spikes, I added some drywall anchors on top of the head. These will later become electrical insulators. That way I can have a spiky head and still tie it in with electric hands. For some armor plates, I took the buttons from a broken computer mouse and clipped out notches along their edges. Remember, I need to have this bot have jagged design elements. I have no idea what these parts are or where they even came from, but they're jagged and will fit nicely on the arms. Some additional plating taken from bits cut from the mouse, and now some pauldrons over the shoulders. These I made from the necks of old medicine bottles left over from earlier builds. I cut a few notches in them as well to mimic the notch pattern cut into the mouse button panels. He's slowly getting more spiky and jagged. I want him to be jagged to fit the theme, but not too much that he turns into Pinhead. I continued to add bits and pieces here and there as armor and other details. This piece is from a string of 22 caliber nail driver charges. I picked these up from a construction site if I remember right. The brake disc from a broken toy motorcycle, and a pistol primer to cap it off. After pulling the brake disc off the motorcycle, I decided to cannibalize it further by taking off the front forks to make large pistons for the back of the legs, and some sort of old fuse for a greebly above the eye. I then cut more pieces off the mouse. This one will make up some sort of shielding for the back, and help protect the electrical insulators. More wires were added to act both as electrical wires as well as hydraulic lines. At least that's what I pretend they are. This is my bot. I can do what I want to. From an old laptop keyboard, I pulled the keys off with the plan to use them as more armor plates. Underneath the keys, I found there were also these really cool little bracket giblet bits. I placed the keys around the upper arms or shoulders, and the little brackets I placed throughout the build as cool little detailed greeblies. For some little tips on the end of the electrical prongs or fingers, I punched out the center of a spent shotgun primer. Inside is what is called the amble, but for me, it will make a cool little bot finger dealing. Plus, the cap part of the primer can be used as a conductive top for the bot's insulator. Double duty. A couple of more ports, and then on to electric hands. To create some faux electric arcs, I'm taking some fine copper wire and bending it into jagged, erratic lines. After I'd made a bunch of these arc wires, I glued them onto the hands and between the insulators on the top and back of the bot. I then put a little mesh grid over the right arm. This plastic mesh came out of the venting on a broken laptop. I think the same laptop I pulled the keyboard parts from. Now it's rivet time. These small rivets are from what I think they call diamond paintings. They come with these handy little wax tip styluses that aid in picking up and placing these tiny bits. Not sure who figured out this technique for bashing, but whoever it was, thank you. And of course, for bigger rivets, my go-to googly eyes. For a nice platform to glue my foam base to, I found this nice routed wood plank. I might have picked it up from a dollar store somewhere along the way. Once I got my foam base cut to the size that I wanted, just score and snap, I glued the base to my wood plank. A little progress check to see how things are looking, and then I simply began to rip chunks of foam from the base using my fingers or any tool that would work. Then I used a flathead screwdriver to give it finer detail and break up. Once that was done, I glued back on some of the chunks that I had ripped off earlier to create boulders and other small rock forms. Now it's time to prep for painting. After masking off the wood plank, I covered the foam with the old Mod Podge and black acrylic paint mixture. This will prevent the spray rattle can primer from eating into and melting the foam. Once that was done, I primed it in gray spray primer that adheres to plastic, and then a nice flat black spray paint. Ooh, ninja. They always look cool in flat black. I then took my soldering iron and scratched, scarred, and made little pock marks. I should have done this before priming, but it wasn't too much of an issue. I also added some bicycle valves on the top and back of the bot to act as additional electrical bits. I waited to add these until now because I wanted to have them unpainted, and this way I wouldn't have to mask them off. Now time for painting. But before we get started, have you all seen the trailer for the movie Constipation? It may not matter anyway. I don't know if that movie is ever coming out. Think about it, Martha. There, she got it. It wouldn't be a Tales from the Art Side video without dad jokes. Anyway, for the base of the painting of this bot, I'm going to for a more military look, olive drab green. To get this, I'm using a very old bottle of cheap forest green craft paint. This bottle is so old, the cap is yellowing, chalky, and brittle, but the paint worked perfectly for what I wanted. Once I had the green base completed, I dry brushed a bit of neutral gray here and there on some of the edges and standout surfaces. This was just to create the look of rub marks and other abrasions to the paint surface. For the rust around damaged areas and rivets, I went with a bold flash rust look. For this, I used the color terracotta from the Americana craft paint. Sorry, I forgot to get a shot of the bottle. Now for the metallics. Again, here just craft paint. For places like hydraulic piston rods, wire connectors, and anywhere else that I thought looked good, I painted them with a straight silver. For other places that I wanted to appear more like aged copper, I'd first lay down a coat of bronze, then lightly dry brush the edges with a touch of gold. To go along with the military theme, and just a touch of color, I added some red stripes on the arms, legs, and head. It was a nice contrast to the OD green. A touch of gray on the insulators, and it was time for the electric arcs on the hands. For this, I glued some polyfill to the tips of my wire bundles. Just as a note, I later changed the polyfill for just cotton from a cotton ball, but it was the same idea. Then I painted the wires with a bright white. And with the aid of my handy Amazon cardboard box spray booth, I airbrushed my colors, moving from a bright yellow to orange and ultimately to a blue-green. And for the base, nothing really fancy here. I covered everything with a nice base coat of brown, then went through and dry brushed lighter accents over the top. Pretty simple. I then glued in a deep red dollar store glass bead dealie. I know they have a special name, but I can't remember it right now. And for a final touch, a bit of oil leaks around the joints. For this effect, I used Minwax's espresso wood stain, but I think any dark wood stain would really do. Once it dries, it'll retain a wet, oily look around the joints. It will also contrast well against the flat olive drab. Well, as I wrap up this build, I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you for watching. I want to give a special shout out to my patrons, Stephen Kick, The Shillings, Charles FDX, and the newest patron, Akunin. And remember, if you like these builds, please like, subscribe, and share. Oh, and if you'd like to be a patron, click the link in the description below. Thank you. I think it's time for the final showcase. I want to once again thank Bill Making Stuff for inviting me to this exciting collaboration. Oh, and be sure to continue watching to the end of the video to see a sample of the more than 20 collaborators of this year's Big Bot Bash. And for a full list of this year's collaborators, look in the description below. Thank you.